Welcome back to TTC. Last time we dove into lights, we bought the most impossibly high lumen rated flashlights on Amazon, stuck them into our integrating sphere, and pulled back the curtain on those out of this world claims from modestly priced models. Why Amazon allows for that to happen and what they could implement to help prevent it. Today, by much popular demand, we take a look at some real known brands found on Amazon and hopefully some legit, this time really high lumen lights as well, these being all under $100. Are better known names playing a more honest game with these multi-thousand lumen lights? We're also going to give away the top 4 best performing examples from today to our viewers who have downloaded our lifetime of tool rankings in the past and up to this month of September, just as a thank you. Truthfully, this process started months ago before our Amazon episode when we posed the question, can our sphere even measure high lumen lights like these with some accuracy? We calibrated it with less blinding examples, and theoretically that shouldn't just disappear, but maybe it trails off in accuracy. So we sent this 4,400 lumen night core and this Sawfern with a lumen figure in the 5 digits out to a lab to check our readings, which took some months, and you'll be seeing the results of that coming up shortly. Well, we got 3 large flashlights and 3 more sort of jacket pocket size models, so let's start out with the smaller class first. In order of price, we have the Thrunite, the TC20 V2. It's $69, which is the cheapest on the day, and is a 26650 battery cell size flashlight rated for 4,068 lumens. Last time we tested a Thrunite, it was a bit under its rating, but also that was a AA model in design, so perhaps we were hamstringing it there. This one using a 5,000 mAh 26650 to power a single Cree XHP 70.2. That should help it reach that 4K lumens too. Pretty cool using a real XHP 70.2 in this episode. It charges with a USB-C, which we like to see, and at 2 amps, which is great. And well, yeah, it's bright enough to wash out the detail from our matte here. At night, it's got a good beam, not too flood-like, not too spot-focused, but doesn't smack you over the head with its brightness, really. Let's see what the sphere has to say about that 4,068 lumens. Waiting 30 seconds per the ANSI FL1 standard, and 3,391, 3,400 looks to be 3,400 lumens. Low is 300, then 1,800 lumens, but high is not over 3,400. That's just 83.6%, a bit better than the AA Thrunite we tested, but still more off than we expected from this more name brand type category, though still nowhere near the 1.5 to 25% of advertised from the Amazon game of Lumen Roulette. Next up in price among this hand size group is the Nikon E4K, the flashlight that we sent off. A $90 flashlight rated for 4,400 lumens and features a button switch that can be tapped, as in like a half press, or fully click down to enter various settings. But all can get into its turbo setting quite easily. It uses a 5,000 mAh 21700 cell this time inside that you can charge from the battery only at just 1 amp, not very quick. But that 21mm diameter on the battery means it is a bit smaller than the Thrunite, and it looks in person brighter as well, certainly harder to look at least. Let's see what the sphere says like we did before shipping it out. So that's 4,270. Let's try that again, 4,240. Since we're over 4K, this range here in its display mode is the next level up, which means you need to add a 0. So that's 4,250 or thereabouts. That's quite good, though we did have to force this light to stay in turbo mode during our test. The temperature monitor on this thing comes in hard and fast, throttling it quite quickly. In the Integration Spheres lab, the real one, said as much as well. They measured 4,303 lumens, and in case you're curious, a color temperature of 6,000 K, but also mentioned that the light needed to be forced to stay in turbo as otherwise it drops out within 20 seconds or so. I guess more tactical surprise type turbo mode after all, rather than anything practically useful for us at least. But that does mean our sphere is fairly linear with its measurement. We measured 4,250, the lab said 4,303 on the same light. I'll take that. We're going to use the 4,250 here since this is the equipment all these others will be judged on, which makes for 96.6%. I can definitely see how this could be marketed as a 4,400 lumen light. Next up, and by popular demand, we have the Olight Seeker 3, certainly the best packaging of the bunch if that's your sort of thing, and by far the most comfortable as well. This bamboo type shape they call it in the hand is surprisingly nice. This is a 3500 lumen rated light that goes for around $93. In their usual double tap turbo mode, it gets fairly bright. We all agreed here it sort of resembles the Thrunite in person a lot, but at a little smaller size, using again a 21700 cell, but a 4000 milliamp hour one in this case. That battery is charged with Olight's go-to magnetic cable that's included in the package, which certainly has its pros and cons, being exposed terminals basically, but hard to argue with the ease of this sort of setup. This version of the cable is also capable of 2 amps charging. We saw 1.7 on this model. And on the sphere, this 3500 lumen light is registering 3476, 3490. Back in the 4 digits, now that we're below 4K, we're going to call that 3480. Basically spot on 100% for the Olight here. Next, we're going to take a look at some of the larger form factor lights. First with the Streamlight Protac HL5X, because frankly everything we've tested from the brand has been fairly durable and close to their advertised lumens. We're starting with this one because it advertises the same 3500 as that last Olight, but in a more old school size of a light. While long, this grip is also rather narrow, taking 2 Streamlight 18650s that charge at the battery only with an included dual micro USB cable, but we did confirm it takes standard non-branded 18650 cells if you already own those. This totals for 5200 milliamp hours, and its beam is very bright, washing the matte out, but also very spot focused. The on button is no nonsense, mostly just turns on to high. I love that sort of thing. Here it is next to the Olight, the same 3500 rated, definitely high candela focused, a flashlight for pointing at things or things far away for sure. Of its advertised 3500, it sees 3900. Not just meeting, but seemingly well surpassing its claims compared to the others. You love to see it. That's going to be 111% of where they say it should be. Good stuff. Okay, next up we have a bit of an oddball, and you'll see. We wanted to include a brand that you may have heard of, but also one maybe not known for flashlights, to sort of give this category a left field, potentially sketchy example, but also not a no-name brand. This is the Interstate Batterieslig 6100, a usually around $90 to $95 light that advertises 8,000 lumens, and they call it a portable floodlight, so much in contrast to that Streamlight, this provides a massive, mostly uniform light spread. About as different as 2 lights can be, these two. Oh, and that's in low. This is the Interstate in high. It's like silly bright for how much area this covers. Now check this out. Streamlight, and this is the Interstate. Now I'm quite partial for flood type patterns, probably working on cars. It's not everyone's cup of tea, but this thing just puts out a ton of light. Sort of like the no-name lights we tested, it uses a double stack of 26650s for 10,000 milliamp hours of capacity written on it, and we'll check that, and charges at the light at a rate of 1.5 amps. So of its 8,000 lumens, the sphere says 9460, 9420, 9400. That's bonkers. And no, this episode's not brought to you by Interstate Batteries. Didn't even know they made lights until making this episode. We buy all these products as usual, even though several of these brands send us partnership deal inquiries on the regular. That's 118% for your money, which is really cool. The build quality doesn't feel quite Streamlight on pieces of it, but it does bring the brightness for sure. Okay, last up we have an 11,000 lumen rated Sawfern, the Q8 Pro. About as much lumens as you can purchase at the $100 price point that we could find on Amazon. You could of course drop $600-700 for all the lumens on a single flashlight, but that might not be a useful buying guide for many of you, methinks. This is a chonker of a light, and that's thanks to these quad 18650 arrangement of batteries inside that sort of just sit there located in a tray jostling around. It's silly looking, but frankly I just kind of love the simplicity of it because it just works. They all contact this copper ring on the top, and each of these are a 3000 milliamp hour cell, so that's 12,000 milliamp hours in total. One thing I found a bit weird is the on-off button stays illuminated, basically always. Easy to find in the dark, but sort of weird, and I assumed some parasitic loss. but where it is about 6 months or so depending on the settings there, so not a huge concern I suppose. I usually give this soda can like body a quarter turn and it stays off either way. And it's bright, like silly bright. Like you could feel the heat coming off the front of this thing, sort of bright. Hard to look at very long even compared to the 9K lumens Interstate. Sadly, the lab that we sent this to still has this model. 3 months later, we still don't have a report. The delays out there in the industry are everywhere right now, which means we had to also buy another one of these to show for you guys here, and also because it's a cool light and we probably want to give it away. Now this light is a bit of an oddball, no turbo mode per se, but high, well, I'll show you what I mean. Starting at around 10 seconds into the 30-second waiting period, this appears to be 11,300, 11,200, 11,100 lumens. Then it starts falling out of the sky like a rock, so that by 30 seconds we're peaking at about 8,200, 8,400 lumens or so. But it's not thermal throttling so much as yet, because you can go right back into high again over 11K. So if we're going by just strictly ANSI standard, this is like an 8,400 lumen light. But if that standard were, for example, at 25 seconds, 20 seconds, it would still be over 11K. Now, I feel we can list both here, because seeing as the night core needed to be kept in turbo after 15 to 20 seconds, switching back into high for this light isn't exactly criminal. I'll leave that up to you guys though, but this is what it would look like. Either way, it definitely can and does make over 11,000 lumens. Other lights we don't see this kind of dive from at all. Alright, run times. These are some spicy lights with large batteries that are going to be drained quite quick. This is their advertised run times. Let's see who can keep up some of those high lumen figures and for how long. The first 3 jacket pocket size lights are up first. We got Thrunite, Nightcore, then Olight. So they all drop out of high and turbo, and the Nightcore doing so in a blink of an eye. Then it's the Thrunite that maintains the most illumination with 1350 or so, but suffers from that dying out at 1.5 hours. The Olight stays above 1,000 for a long time as well, but meets up with the Nightcore around 2 hours, then sinks down, both of them out by 3 hours. The Thrunite did get quite toasty here in the first 20 minutes, 120, 123 degrees Fahrenheit, even with a gentle breeze in the room, which felt a bit hot for my liking, but is definitely putting in the most work. That Nightcore drops down to 500 lumens within the first couple minutes, which seems kind of weak for a 4,400 lumen rated light. That's just my thoughts. Next up are the big boy lights. We have the Streamlight, Interstate, then the Sawfern. The Streamlight only drops down to medium, which is still 2,200 lumens. I love that. And the Sawfern and Interstate mingle around 1,300. Though the Streamlight then dwindles and dies at only an hour and a half, whereas the other two continue on. Interstate gets to nearly 3 hours, then Sawfern spikes for some reason, and then dies soon after at 3 hours 45. In a world of turbo modes, I've been lusting after a high lumen light that, stays high lumen, so the Thrunite and the Streamlight, I think they're cool. The Interstate and Sawfern as well. So very different performance across the board from similarly spec'd and priced lights, really. So this is how they did on runtime. This first 1.5 hours was true. This 3 hours and 15 minutes, pretty much as well too. The Olight's 2 hours was 3 hours for us. And the rest of these, not disappointing either. This Interstate even lasting 50 minutes longer than advertised. Let me tell you, that is not the usual case on this channel for us. Frankly, all these lights, incredibly well advertised for the most part, benefiting the consumer, very much the opposite to our last batch of Amazon lights. Here are their charge times and measured battery capacities. The Streamlight only takes 0.5 amp per cell with that split charger and suffers for it. The Sawfern saw 2.5 amps charging and was the fastest of this bunch despite a 11 to 12,000 milliamp hour total capacity. That's pretty nice. As far as sort of total light output across this test, the standouts again being Sawfern, Interstate, then of this group Olight and Thrunite again. Now the Nightcore was perhaps my favorite out of the box just using it initially, but really fell from grace. The thermal throttling within the first 20 seconds and then down to 500 lumens. I mean, I didn't buy a 500 lumen light, I bought a 4,400 one. If you ignore sort of like the lumen honesty, I suppose here, Thrunite did best among these, but when you consider heat and size, delivering here or over-delivering here, the Olight did very well too. I'd probably give it the edge if there wasn't this cost difference. So now down here of these three, that's a super hard one. 3 completely different beasts, delivering at a high level, over-delivering, or super high lumens even after an hour. The Interstate was definitely a cool underdog, but you guys tell us in the comments what you like of these best. Based on that, we'll be giving 2 of these away from your favorites, and we'll message the winners directly. Now, while you watch me try to turn on all these lights at the same time into high and turbo to make for, I don't know, an alien homing beacon, let us appreciate a randomly chosen handful of brands and models that, for the most part, brought or even piled on some extra on top of their advertised specs. All purchased from the same Amazon that brought us the absolute mess that was our last list of entries. Despite these super high lumens attached to these lights are trusting you, the consumer, to digest real info, not just what you want to see. Perhaps the best performing single group of lights we've tested thus far. Thanks for watching.